I'm going to jump in here really quick before we get into the podcast to let you know that there are a few changes going on with CV Ministries. One of the biggest is that we are relocating our office. And honestly, I really don't want to move all of our inventory. So if you want an opportunity to put together a training library for your team, or as you onboard new members to be able to provide them resources to get going, now is a great opportunity. Everything on our website is 50% off now through Easter, only while supplies last. So why not take advantage of this opportunity to expand your training and serving resources? You can take advantage of this savings and the opportunity by going to our website at www.cv-ministries.com. And within the website, you'll see our store there. Go in there, and anything that we have is going to be 50% off with promo code CV2021. Again, that's CV2021.
Connecting with other churches in your area to find out and to share what's going on. What are you seeing in your area, the community, that may be coming my way? Or what are you experiencing that we need to be aware of?
Welcome to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast, and I'm your host, Daniel Blevins. My guest today is Jeff Grant. Just like I've requested in recent podcasts, Jeff emailed me about being a guest, and here we are. He has served in a variety of areas within his church and is currently the pastor of operations, which within that department oversees the safety and security aspect of his church. I hope that Jeff's experiences and insights will encourage you in your leadership at your church. Our conversation went a little long, so this is going to be a two-part podcast. As usual, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, as well as do a Google review for us. All right, so let's get going. Let's spend some time with Jeff talking about a leader's perspective on the security of his church. Jeff, welcome to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast.
Thanks so much, Daniel. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. And so you sent me an email yesterday, actually, and this is what we kind of encourage in the podcast is, we want to hear from people because there's so many people that have a variety of different backgrounds, experiences. We've called the series Mistakes Made and Lessons Learned in it. And sometimes it's not so much mistakes made, but what lessons have been learned or how could we have done things differently or better. And it's been great advice for a lot of churches around the country. So it was great to see you jump on that yesterday and send me that email right after the podcast went out. And at your church, and I really like this because it gives a different perspective. You're not necessarily the security lead or the you're the pastor of operations at your church, and security falls under you. And I know that there's a lot of people out there and a lot of people that have questions for church leadership. How do we get church leadership on board is a lot of the questions, but also, from your perspective and what you've seen through this process with your church, there's probably a lot of things that can help others as well. Whether we call them mistakes made, it's kind of a rough one because, it may not be necessarily mistakes, but what direction maybe we went in one way and God's like, no, we need to go a different direction on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I've been a pastor for over 30 years. And this is my fifth church that I've been part of. And that whole process of coming out of, college and seminary to get to a place where, I am today as the operations pastor. I've done everything from, youth ministry, adult ministry, executive pastor, and I've really kind of understood myself in each of those transitions to kind of what is my sweet spot. And my desire is really to just help facilitate ministry going forward. And so all those behind the scene type of things that need to take place so that, God can show up. If the heat's not on, the sound's not working, the lights don't work, the coffee's not ready, the parking lot's not plowed, it's kind of hard for people to hear the gospel. And so right. I kind of take that responsibility to say, I'm going to eliminate all those distractions. And so developed a phrase and stole it from another ministry, basically saying that, I eliminate distractions so that God can show up. And our team, rallies around that to say, okay, what are the distractions that would prohibit somebody from, hearing the gospel, feeling comfortable at a church, to drop your kids off in a room and then leave them with people that I really don't know, and go to another room in the building and sit and try to focus on what's being said, knowing my kids are somewhere else. And so safety and security is one of those things that we really want to make sure that families can feel good about. Hey, my kid's well taken care of, they're protected. I know they're going to be there when I go back to pick them up, type of a scenario. And so just really taking on this challenge of what does church security look like, and how do we continue to develop it?
Yeah, I did a podcast a while back. You bring up a great point on those distractions and the importance of the security ministry within a church. I did a podcast last year with a gentleman who is a secret shopper, essentially, to churches. That's it. What he does, goes around the country and is that secret shopper kind of guy.
Yeah.
And one big point that he pointed out that I guess I didn't realize at the time, and then you just brought it up again, is that people are actually, especially young families, are looking at security as one of those components of whether I come to this church or I don't come to this church.
Absolutely.
And it was amazing the feedback that we even got from people that were like, I had not even thought of that as being even a consideration. But more and more of churches, if they're growing in vibrant churches, not having a security component it can change that in today's day and age.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things that we've, when I came on staff 8 years ago, the group had already been in operation for a number of years, and the pastor went through initiating that group, and we can talk about how that got formed. But when I came on staff and it became my responsibility to oversee it, we really, security is a continuum, right? You can be wide open like the mall and just walk in any door and go to any store you want, or you could go to a prison and have to get buzzed in every step of the way. And where does your church fall on that security continuum? And do you even have different levels of that continuum in different places? So in our building, you can walk in just like the mall. Church is open, and so it's open. Deliveries come, people come for Bible studies during the day. You walk right in the door. But if you want to get to our children's wing, no, there's somebody standing there. It's a locked hallway. You've got to actually be given access to it. And then there's different protocols on who gets access even down that hallway. Just because you want to go, do I have a kid? Are you checked into our system? Do you have a tag? All those kinds of things. So even within our campus, we've got various levels of that security continuum. And we really value that families, when they come on a Sunday, they want to know their kids are protected, cared for, safe, so that they can enjoy the service themselves and focus in on that and not be distracted with, I wonder if my kid's going to be there, or, who's watching them, those kinds of things.
Yeah, something you just mentioned about. So let me ask you this: at your church, what does because you're a pastor, you're on staff, you're there during the week, so that gives a good perspective. But what does security look like for your church during the week? And I ask that from the standpoint it's an aspect of church security that is often neglected, let's say, where there's counseling going on, there's domestic issues, there's things that are happening within. Are the staff equipped to handle something should it happen, or is there other measures? I'm not asking for, because in no way do I want to give away state secrets, but just kind of talk about a little bit about that. I'm all in. I mean, the church is there for the hurting and the broken. We want it to be open, but we want to create that safe environment. So what does that look like outside the weekend for your church?
Such a good question. And we really, even over the time that I've been here, have really grown in that area. And we talk about it because different people will come and they'll view what we do. And there's certain things, like you said, I don't share because it's security for a reason, right? So we don't share those kinds of things, but they look at it and they go, man, we could never do this or be this. And I remind them, I'm like, listen, it's been happening longer than I've been here. We're eating the elephant one bite at a time. So don't look at the elephant, but just take a bite. Like, find what your next step is at your place. And if it's, whatever that may be, just take that next bite. And if you consistently take that bite over time, guess what? You get to a place where you go, man, I never thought we could be here, because I never thought in the 30 plus years that I've been a pastor that I would be responsible for security. And so we actually had this where very clear expectations of, and we call it a safe team. So we've just even that word of just trying to soften it a little bit. Yeah. That, we call it a safe team, and because it provides a safe space. We're not just there to be the bodyguards or the bouncers or,
right.
Standing there with our arms crossed and, looking at everybody as they come through the doors.
The sanctified Secret Service.
Yeah, there you go. But we call it a safe team, and they're really the eyes and the ears around the building. And on a Sunday, primarily, we're there for the Sunday services. And we've been very clear, at least with, I've got a supervisor. I've got somebody that I report to. And I never want them to be surprised as to what we have and we don't have. So if there were a call that something were to come in and I'd be like, well, sorry, we can't do that. Like, really? I thought that's what you did, So I'm very clear in what our minimum expectations are, what our coverage looks like, who's around. And so the other ministries in the church begin to make assumptions that because it's their Sunday, what about Wednesday night youth group, or like you talked about midweek women's Bible study and those kinds of things. And so we've had to kind of define where we start and stop, what resources are available for non-Sunday things. How do I request, if I have a big event, can we get the safe team, or we work in tandem with a medical team that I oversee. And so how do I get those resources together? And what we ended up looking at is I went to leadership at one point and I'm like, our worship team has a tremendous amount of resources. I mean, you give them a stage and sound equipment, a drum kit, multiple staff members. They've got the resources to do their job. And I said, you want me to provide quote unquote security? I need resources. Like, you need to, like, it's more than just a body. And so they were once I positioned it that way, it kind of was obvious that, yeah, you know what, we're probably lacking and can't just assume that a body is the one that, so talking through that whole process with them to say, what are the resources that we need, whether it be Sunday or midweek? How do we train our staff? Does it have to be lethal? Can it be non-lethal? What kind of alert systems do we have, or ways to call the police if we need to and manage that, time gap? So it looks definitely different during the week than it does on a Sunday. But so does the volume of people and the different issues that are happening in the building.
We just want to take a quick break here to let you know how to contact us and where to find out more about our national seminar. I see communities that may know why church security is important, but they may not be doing anything about it or don't know how to do it well. Our national seminars are for ushers, greeters, children's workers, staff, volunteers, your security teams. and other ministries in your community. We say that this is a level 1 training that is designed to help equip you to serve well in your various ministries while maintaining a safe place for people to come. Getting churches on the same or similar page when it comes to security will only make the community safer as well. The easiest way to find out more information or to contact us is to go to cv-ministries.com. There you'll find a variety of training DVDs and books, with more being developed all the time. There's also a place at the bottom of the page where you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and to be able to get more information. We would love your feedback on topics or guests that you would like to hear on future podcasts. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to the podcast. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Do you, are the staff given some training from time to time, is one question. The other question is there, and let's say you have a new staff member that comes on board at the church, is there an onboarding process that includes security as part of that training for them as they're coming on board?
Yeah, so we have, various orientations, and I'm brought in we have a preschool at our church. And
Okay.
so I work with the preschool staff typically at their, summer orientation classes. The new wave of teachers are coming on. I work with our children's and students to kind of think through in their mind, how are you going to handle different situations? We've actually started a church-wide, what I call an evacuation drill on a Sunday. So just like you would at school, the kids have a fire drill or an evacuation drill. We don't evacuate the parents from the worship service, but we do the kids, and we run it through at least once or twice a year, help them understand this is what we want you to do and respond. And it gives the volunteers an opportunity to think through some things, the staff to think through some things. And then gives us an opportunity within our worship service. I call it the airplane talk. The exit you came in may not be the exit you need to evacuate from. And we've got, 2 over the wings and 2 out the back.
Right.
It's the same thing in the worship service. You came in a door, but in the event of an emergency, do you know we have other exits in the building? And, where your child is now may not be where they're going to be when you leave in an emergency situation. And where's that reunification spot? And so we work through all that, and at least annually have that conversation with our congregation to say, here's what we expect from you. Here's what you can expect from us. We run that through. And so, yeah, staff are brought through an orientation, even from a workplace situation. If something happens during the workday, where do we want to gather and take inventory of, is everybody out? And, is everybody okay? Is everybody safe? Depending on what the scenario is. And, ways to call the different resources of whether it be police or ambulance or whatever the need may be.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming more and more, I'm hearing it more and more often, I guess, is that the congregation is being included into, aspects of that training, or invited into aspects of the training. I've got a great podcast. It's on a culture of training. And they're talking about that, creating that culture of training within the church, and he does a great job with it at his church, and and very similar to what you guys are doing with the congregation. And it really kind of got me thinking that how important that is, and probably even more so. It's kind of a change that people haven't wanted to take, but maybe is necessary. Is the congregation prepared should an emergency happen? We're not seeing ushers and greeters and, children's workers and various other people trained regularly on what to do and how to assist security, how to be that eyes and ears better, all those kinds of things. So yeah, anything that we can do for the congregation, for the other ministries, I think is just huge. It's a force multiplier. I call it it's a total team concept. Security isn't just the few people that are called to stand on the wall. It's got to be everybody in ministry that is more situationally aware than maybe what they otherwise would be. in the
Well, I think
past.
to alert to a situation, to elevate any issue to the right people. I talk about, we say, see something, say something, right?
Right.
But I take it further with our, greeters and those things. It's great if you see something to say something, but do you know who to say it to?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
who's your next point of contact that you need to say something to, so that they can then get it to the right people, so that the response is what it needs to. And then I'd also say, from the congregation standpoint, is they don't need to know the plan.
Right.
I think they just need to know you have a plan,
Yeah.
and allow us to respond first, and let us take the lead, and rightly so. If something's not happening, they're going to react, but at least they know, hey, we've got somebody for almost every situation that should be responding. And so give us that benefit, because what we don't want is, we don't want that person sitting in the row to take action on their own to kind of
Right.
solve the problem. We need to be present enough to let them know, hey, let us handle it, and then go from there. Because that's when everybody does what's right in their own eyes, that's when it gets a little dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's a whole nother subject I've covered a lot of times on there. That's almost the most, the scariest part of it is the John Wayne or somebody who has that alpha
Yeah,
security, safety mindset that stands up to do something, but now they've just presented themselves as a potential threat, um,
yeah. We don't know if
in
they're
it.
part of the problem, or are they there to help.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes it really tough. I feel for our law enforcement who have to deal with it on a regular basis, but then you put a lot of people don't train or don't think about it from um, a crowd standpoint. You throw a crowd together like you do in a worship service or something like that. That changes the whole dynamic of how we respond. And nothing's ever cookie cutter. Training should always. That's kind of, I think, the fun aspect of training, or can be, is that nothing's cookie cutter. You can run the
yeah.
same scenario 8 different times, 8 different ways, to just get people thinking about it differently. But yeah, you're absolutely right. As long as the congregation and people know that, when it comes to the firearm piece, it's something that I've encouraged churches to state, that, and we've done it. It used to be on our website to basically say, we recognize your Second Amendment right to carry a firearm. We just ask that you don't do it here. We don't post it anywhere. We're not
Right,
creating, but we just say
right.
that because if they're carrying properly, we'll never know.
Yep,
Fine.
yep.
Um, if I notice that you're carrying, well, now I'm going to ask you to go put it out in your car, and I'll explain to them that we have a well-trained, well-armed security component here at the church to respond, and we don't want to create a friendly fire situation or an unsafe environment for the congregation if you were to respond.
Yeah, it is a concern. I guess my take on that is, I don't want to, in some aspects, assume certain liabilities that, if I can't deliver. So by you asking me to put it back, you're in essence saying you will provide that for me. And um, I think we'll do a good job. I'd put our
Yeah,
team up against anybody. Um, I'm just going to let them know that, hey, let us respond first. Let us handle the situation. If you feel the need that you've got to do something, just realize that we don't know who you are, and there's a risk inherent for you and them. But I look at it from unfortunately an aspect of, if I tell you you don't need to have that, and then something happens to you, and then you're able to say, well, Daniel told me you would protect me.
right. Now
I'm
you've created a liability potentially. Yeah,
that's where I would say, so yeah, we don't post anything. We're not a gun-free zone, in
right.
our church. People are going to have it. We actually, part of our team's role is the power of observation. We're there observing, so that we're looking to see, what does that look like? Do we see somebody that you had mentioned that has a weapon, in, concealing it, and then, to pull up alongside of them and just be like, hey, great, glad confirm it, but then also like say you're more than welcome, but just know that we don't want you to be part of the problem.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point because it's a tough balance. Because I've had similar conversations. I don't with individuals that I notice that are carrying, and what I often tell them is, we just ask that you don't respond, but that you protect your family or yourself
Absolutely. Absolutely.
if it comes to that. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a tough balance. I know the stance that our church takes with removing it. It doesn't always fit, for
And each
everybody.
state
And
is different. I've got family in Ohio, and my understanding in Ohio is even though you have a CCP or a CCW on a church property, you're not allowed to bring the weapon into the church. Like it's in the
without the
law.
authorization of the pastor, written
Right.
authorization of the
You've got to
pastor.
get permission, so to speak, to do that.
Right.
Like if I, my reciprocity allows me to have, my carry conceal applies in Ohio. And if I wanted to carry in Ohio, I could, but do I realize that I'm not allowed in Ohio to go into a church like that? Like that's what is really been on my forefront is understanding all the limitations related to reciprocity and do I know the state laws of announcing to a police officer, I have a concealed weapon when I get pulled over. Do I need to? Do I have to? Am I expected to? Yeah, it's so complicated.
It is. I often travel with mine when I do fly, but I always look first. What can I do and not do? What are the
Yeah,
reciprocity laws for that particular state? And I quit carrying in Ohio really if we've done a few seminars out there, and it's just a little nuts. It's a little their laws are a little nuts, and in the church it ties their hands in many ways, with some of the rules and what they can and can't do out there.
absolutely.
And I know they're working on changing aspects of that for the churches, but no, you're
Certainly.
absolutely right. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough balance, and ultimately, it's like, okay, Lord, it's in your hands. Ultimately, on how we
Sure.
respond, what we do,
Yep.
and what the other people do. It's all the more important why we want those individuals, particularly on our teams, to know the people that are coming to our church and to have that discernment
Yep.
of and decision making. Being able to quickly be able to make those decisions, rightly so or wrongly so. Observing, is somebody a threat to me or not a threat, or
Yeah.
otherwise. Yeah, there's so many facets to it. It's a tough one. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this podcast. If you really enjoyed it and you found it of benefit to you, we really appreciate your feedback. There's several different ways that you can provide us feedback. One of them is to subscribe to the podcast, is to share it with others, and another is to contact us directly, particularly if you have any questions or concerns, or you want more information on how to host a seminar in your community. You can contact me directly at danielblevins@cv@heart.com, or you can go to our website. That's cv-ministries.com. Both of those will get you in the right direction. Until next time, make sure that you're out there protecting the flock with a heart of service.